As a father and grandfather, nothing affects me more deeply and personally than violence in the city, especially gun violence, and the violence that needlessly takes all of our children from us and adults. That's why I'm determined for us to do all we can in Chicago protect all of our communities, our children, and our future. When we lose a child, we lose a little of ourselves as well. And if we don't express our outrage, we lose more of our humanity, and I firmly believe that. An example is the police officer being killed last night. More and more in these times, it seems that we put up the walls to protect ourselves from bad news and from acting to change the things and stand against the violence. Gun violence just doesn't happen. You get used to it. Seems to be the mantra around the nation today. Well, I think that's just a lot of bull. Guns aren't just Chicago's challenge. It is our nation's challenge on a daily basis. There are more than 270 million privately owned firearms in our country, the equivalent of 9 firearms for every 10 women and children. In an average year, more than 100,000 people in America are shot or killed with a gun. There are sons and daughters, mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, or co-workers. Over 3,000 of these victims are children and teens on a yearly basis in America. That means that every day, more than 80 people die from guns, and another 200 are wounded, and many suffer permanent injuries and damage. I am proud that instead of accepting the violence and the gangs and thugs and drug dealers who are behind most of it, we're standing up here in Chicago. But I have to be honest, I look across the nation, I am very concerned. Our nation remains one of the few industrialized countries in the world that places so few restrictions on gun sales. Instead of approaching the national problem in a common sense way by regulating gun shops and gun owners, banning assault weapons, and making sure that only responsible people carry weapons, increasingly states allow gun shops to sell guns to irresponsible people and allow gun trafficking to continue all across our nation. The last time I checked, there are no gun manufacturers in Chicago. So the guns that are on the streets have come from someplace else in the nation or even from another country. That's called gun trafficking. It's a federal crime. It's frequently done just outside of our city limits, where gun shops, either knowingly or unknowingly, sell weapons that end up being used in gang and drug violence on Chicago streets. And then, of course, there are the gun corridors from gun manufacturing states, which has been proven by everybody here, every time there's a report, where massive numbers of guns are driven across state to state to be knowingly sold illegally in our state and our city. I share the frustration of every Chicagoan that the violence continues, especially because most Americans support reasonable and common sense gun laws. I think we want reasonable, common sense gun laws. We all support the Second Amendment, but it's beyond imagination that any writers of our Constitution ever anticipated that our nation would routinely use guns to harm our neighbors, our brothers and sisters, our children, and our co-workers. And the writers of the Constitution never, ever believed that these type of weapons would be in America on a daily basis. A couple of weeks ago, yet another survey showed that most Americans favor common sense gun laws. The Brady Center to Prevent Gun Violence found that a majority of Americans don't think people should be allowed to carry loaded weapons in public. But there's a movement on that across the country. And this isn't new. For many years, people have supported efforts like those we have pursued in Springfield to enact reasonable gun laws. Despite strong opposition from the gun industry, and remember, I describe the gun industry, I think he's bigger than President Obama, bigger than Congress, it's the Supreme Court, bigger than Mayor Daley. Name anybody you want. It's the only industry. It's the only industry you cannot sue. Everybody in this room, we can always sue, except the gun industry. You cannot sue the gun industry. That's how powerful, that's how strong they are. Bigger than BP Amical, bigger than Toyota, you name it, bigger than, yes, the Fourth Estate, because people do sue the Fourth Estate. Just think, you cannot sue the gun manufacturers. So they're fully protected by law, both many times by the executive, judicial, and legislative branch of government, which is really unfortunate. So we have had several important victories within the last year alone. We were able to pass a number of laws in Springfield, and I want to thank the legislators for doing that. First of all, a new state law that requires mandatory, now listen to this, mandatory minimum jail for gang members caught with illegal guns. A new state law that increases penalties for shooting students on or near school grounds or on or near public transportation. A new law that requires mandatory minimum jail time for people caught with a loaded weapon. You know how many times a police officer grabs a person with a loaded weapon in a car or walking down a street? And by the time they process them, get them to court, by the time the policeman gets out to the car, they're ahead of the policeman. They're already gone. They're already gone. It's treated like speeding on a sidewalk. So though that's why we have passed this law in regards to those who do not have state permits. Further, working with the legislature and the governor, we have created a new interstate gun trafficking task force because the guns are coming from outside Illinois to address the problem of illegal guns that are trafficking all over through Illinois, up to Chicago, going west and going north in and out of Illinois. We are pleased to say that working with all of our allies, we're able to ensure that legislation that would have legalized the carrying of concealed weapons in Illinois did not become law. Now, you talk about a nightmare of carrying concealed weapons for the first responders here, not only in the city of Chicago, but throughout the state. You talk about a nightmare of concealed weapons, that people have a right to carry concealed weapons in a workplace or recreation places or places of worship, or going into, I guess you could carry maybe on a plane then. Then you could go in to see your congressman. You could go and see the federal building. You could move all over. So just think of that, what type of society we would have. And so we are pleased to say that working with all of our allies, we're able to ensure that legislation did not become law. But it's something that's on everyone's mind because that is where the manufacturers would like to have, because it would be a huge financial bonanza for them to allow anyone to carry concealed weapons in the United States. But two such bills were voted out of the committee, but because of the lack of support, never came to the House for a floor vote. How much longer will we be able to resist the strong efforts of the National Rifle Association, extremists who lobby against us at every turn in Springfield is the question. And it's really amazing how powerful they are. I said they're bigger than oil industry, bigger than the gas industry, bigger than Google, bigger than President Obama and the rest of them. That's how powerful they are, and it's something that America has to deal with. In Chicago, we're doing all of our part in the police department to end gun violence. Our recent gun turn-in resulted in 3,874 guns being handed over. Since 2006, this program has taken almost 20,000 illegal guns off the street. I mean, they would tell you, people come with loaded weapons to us. I mean, they walk to you and say, here, take my gun. And it's amazing what type of weapons they're receiving. And even warmer weather nears, we've taken many new steps to provide positive, more constructive activities, of course, to keep all of our students involved during the summer. And of course, primary responsibility, we need families to really make sure where their children are at all times. That is constantly the issue. Our police department is constantly reviewing its crime prevention, fighting strategies to protect all of our communities and our children from gun violence. Looking forward, it's important to remember that before the end of June, the United States Supreme Court will announce its decision regarding Chicago's gun laws. We're hoping for the best, and you have to say that. That's our position, will be sustained. But in today's national climate, we have to plan for the worst, and we are. What I can tell you is this. Whatever the details of the court's ruling will be, Chicago we will always find new ways to keep guns off our streets, out of the hands of gang drug thugs who are trying to intimidate and destroy the way of life in all of our communities. We will, of course, abide by the court's ruling. That's the key. But also continue to look for new ways to adhere to our basic commitment to keep guns off our streets and prevent gun violence. As you know, there's many laws have been recently passed in Washington, D.C. and other cities, so we're really evaluating many of those decisions in regards to how first responders, if you have a right to carry a gun and you're a police officer and you get a call for domestic violence or you get a call for a burglary, or you get a call that a man with a gun is outside someone's home, and the police officer goes to the scene, goes to the door and sees a person with a gun, what decision does he have to make in regards to his safety or the safety in that home? Do you ask the question? You have your FOI card? Do you have legally right to carry this weapon? Are we going to place the burden upon all first responders, even a fireman going into someone's home, any first responders? So when you think about that, you're really placing then first responders in it much more difficult with all the restrictions on police officers, what they can do and what they can't do. We have to work for a worksheet for them, and they have to read it to you and have you said you have to take your FOI card out. Remember, you're going into their home. And if the Supreme Court says they have a right to carry a weapon in a home or weapons, what type of weapons? And that will be an issue that we have to look at, and we have to sit down, yes, with people in the police department, the lawyers, and everybody else to figure this out. And that is because you're placing the police officer's life in jeopardy at all times going into these homes. We will, of course, we will look at all issues, and of course, purpose over pain. All those family members who lost loved ones, who went to Springfield, continue to go to Washington, D.C., back to Springfield. Remember, all those have lost children and adults of gun violence, and unfortunately, that is a very effective organization for us to put a human side to it, that face to the side of someone who is a victim of a crime. And that means whether it's death or seriously injured. You have to show faces of people. We would never give up or give in to gun runners. Gun runners make an enormous amount of money in America, moving guns. I mean, Mayor Bloomberg has pointed that up, all the way from North Carolina, coming up through all the way through New Jersey, up to New York and Boston. And those who want there to be more guns on streets. And some people believe that guns are more important than laws. And if that breaks down, then you have a society in America that will have really conflicts. And that includes going to Washington, again, to seek the ban on assault weapons to be reenacted. I really believe there's no reason why we have so many assault weapons in America. That is unacceptable. That is something that you see more and more on the streets, and the police will testify to that. The amount of guns that have given in, or the guns they have seized over a number of years, the increase of assault weapons. And again, we should not ever jeopardize a police officer's life going onto the streets. It includes pursuing a crackdown on gun shops and their owners at federal and state levels. If they're involved, this is a big industry. They make a lot of money. And they should be held accountable for everything they do. Just like you ask everyone else to be accountable with transparency, openness, and honesty, the same thing, we have to ask that. Most people don't know that in Illinois and most states, gun dealers are allowed to operate with virtually no oversight whatsoever. So we haven't been successful yet in Springfield in getting them regulated whatsoever. Every other industry is regulated or even over-regulated, except that industry is not even regulated. It's regulated very, very lightly. And when you think about the regulation dealing with these guns, we will look for new ways to challenge gun manufacturers, including how they market to younger people, how their marketing strategy is and what they use. We'll continue our efforts to close a gun show loophole in Washington, D.C. Gun shows, I think, are an effort by many straw purchasers, gangbangers, and drug dealers to purchase many, many guns in America on a daily basis. Further, we'll work harder to make sure that only responsible adults can have access to guns across the nation. Now, you think about that. You have to go through driver's ed, and you have to get a license. You have to pass a test for drivers, but you don't have to really do anything to own a gun. And that is it. We have to get some common sense here. At every level of government, we will work to get tougher about illegal gun trafficking. And I think that is the overriding issue that places many of these guns in the hands of young adults, hands of criminals, gangs, and of course, drug dealers. Over the next few weeks, we'll be holding a range of meetings with key law enforcement officials, community, faith-based, and professional people to build a strategy dealing with the worst scenario, dealing with the court decision. Let's be realistic. I know that what I'm proposing goes against the political wind in the country, in both political parties, and it's very unpopular in Illinois and I guess in the country. to say that common sense gun laws and efforts to hold gun manufacturers and gun dealers and gun owners to a higher standard. We can both support the Second Amendment as well to protect us. You have the Second Amendment, I understand that. But again, the National Rifle Association and other groups knows that. And so I believe, so do most Americans who firmly believe that the gun violence is unacceptable. I don't care what they tell me. Toyota was called because of defective brakes. And on a daily basis, these type of weapons, the type of ammunition, things like that, are truly unacceptable. And we talk about all types of first responders and then call for the citizens. And I think gun violence in America should be unacceptable in this century. And I will continue to fight regardless of what political winds change. Doesn't matter. I think it's important that you have to stay with your basic beliefs. And I think this belief is too strong to give up. It's unacceptable. No one should give that up regardless of what can happen in your political future. And you have to be able to explain to people that you're spending an enormous amount of money in the federal, state, and local law enforcement and in judiciary government. The executive branch of government is almost 70%. The federal judiciary is almost taken, and all those local courts, what they do with it. So you're spending an enormous amount of money. And I firmly believe a law should prevail, and not a gun should prevail over decisions should be made in any community. Thank you.